Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country, I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled, and then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important, and there you go. Good things can happen.
1 year later.
Tucker Carlson is in Moscow right now interviewing Vladimir Putin.
Right.
The first American, I'll say, journalist to interview Putin since the war in Ukraine began. What does that tell you about Tucker Carlson and right-wing media, and also Vladimir Putin?
Well, it shows me what I think we've all known. He's what's called a useful idiot. I mean, if you actually read translations of what's being said on Russian media, they make fun of him. I mean, he's like a puppy dog. You know, he somehow has, after having been fired from so many outlets in the United States, I would not be surprised if he emerges with a contract with a Russian outlet, because he is a useful idiot. He says things that are not true. He parrots Vladimir Putin's pack of lies about Ukraine. So I don't see why Putin wouldn't give him an interview.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the mainstream liberal media and their continued meltdown over Tucker Carlson going to Moscow, Russia, to interview Vladimir Putin and get his view, his side of the story when it comes to the war in Ukraine. You know, this is something that they used to call journalism back in the day, right? Especially when, you know, the mainstream liberal media was doing it, okay? When they were interviewing, Vladimir Putin, they said it was journalism, right? But when Tucker interviews Putin, it's treason for whatever reason, right? This is what they say. Again, it's just kind of funny how that works. But the meltdown from the mainstream liberal media is fascinating because it's just getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, they're even at the point where they are fact-checking Tucker Carlson's preview of the interview that he's doing with Vladimir Putin. Take a look.
Interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
Tucker Carlson is lying from the streets of Russia, no less.
Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin.
That's a lie. Serious news outlets, including CNN, have requested Putin to interview over and over again.
Wait, hold on. Did I just hear CNN admit to attempting to commit treason? Right? Because that's what they're accusing Tucker Carlson of doing, which is committing an act of treason, calling him a propagandist, a puppet of Putin, because he's trying to interview him. But when CNN tries to interview Putin, it's journalism. When Tucker tries to interview Putin and is successful, that's treason. Again, it's just funny how that works. CNN tried and failed to interview Putin, right? And they don't consider that to be treasonous or, you know, pushing Kremlin propaganda or anything like that. But when Tucker interviews Putin and is successful, oh, well, that's propaganda. He's not a real journalist. Again, it's amazing how that works. The double standard here is amazing, right?
Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice.
Another lie. Serious news outlets, including CNN, have covered and, of course, reported on Putin's words since this war began, including one of his baseless justifications for the invasion of Ukraine, which he initially claimed was to stop the Nazis.
First, because it's our job. We're in journalism.
Tucker Carlson is not a journalist, not even close. And his former employer in a court case actually agreed. Quote, the general tenor of the show should then inform a viewer that Carlson is not stating actual facts about the topics he discusses and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary.
Well, you know, I hope that Abby applies this same standard to Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, right? I would love to see her segment on why Rachel Maddow is not a real journalist as determined in court. She's not a real journalist. that she's engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary, especially when it comes to issues like, I don't know, the fake Russia collusion hoax that people like Rachel Maddow promoted on MSNBC, right? I would love to hear Abby Phillips' take on whether or not Rachel Maddow is a real journalist. But let's continue on.
2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine.
For 2 years, real journalists have risked their lives to report from the ground each and every day in Russia and in Ukraine, including 2 U.S. journalists who are right now baselessly being detained.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? CNN is having an existential crisis, okay? And the part of the clip that's not in here is Tucker saying that he would interview Vladimir Zelensky as well, too, to be fair, okay? But that's probably something that the mainstream liberal media doesn't want, because this is how they think that an interview with Vladimir Zelensky should be conducted.
As a human being, so many people look up to you. They rely on you. No one can imagine how hard that is. Do you do anything for yourself? Are you ever able to take a minute to read or to listen to music or something to sort of give yourself that a moment?
I have such moments, important, to be in silence, to be alone. Alone, how can I be alone? Alone, I can be with music, it's true, or with a book. And early in the morning, when there are no sounds in...
No air raid sirens.
No people, nobody. I mean, the people, our staff. I mean, nobody is in my cabinet, nobody. Yeah. I can just read, think, and the music helps, really.
Yeah. What music do you like?
Oh, I like AC/DC and Ukrainian music. Yeah. Of course, I like Ukrainian music a lot because Ukrainian, that's native language. That's why you understand not only music, you understand the words and etc. AC/DC, I don't understand all the words because of...
But you like the music.
Yeah, so wouldn't be surprised if Vladimir Zelensky threw his hot dog down her hallway after that interview, considering how much of a slob fest it actually really was, okay? But see, this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid that Tucker is going to interview Putin the same way that they interview Zelensky, which is a total softball, right? That is what the mainstream liberal media counts as journalism, right? They tell you that Tucker is going to be pushing Kremlin propaganda, but that's not propaganda from Kyiv, right? I'm just saying that's not a Ukrainian propaganda. I'm just saying, I don't know. Somebody tell me, okay? I'm just saying. I personally believe that if you're going to justify sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, okay, because they must defend themselves from the evil dictator Putin, and if they can't defend themselves, then according to Chuck Schumer, we may have to go over there ourselves and help fight on behalf of Ukraine and NATO, because they tell us that, hey, we must send billions of dollars to Ukraine to help them fight against Russia so that Russia doesn't eventually invade NATO. This is what they say. So you would think that in order to justify the hundreds of billions of dollars and potential American bloodshed, you would ask this guy really tough questions, right? Tough questions, okay? But that's not what they do, okay, in American journalism and Western media. And instead, what they do is that they tell you that if you ask tough questions, if you interview both sides, both leaders, to try to let the American people decide what they want to believe, if this is worth sending billions of dollars to support or shedding American blood for, that is disinformation, okay? That's what MSNBC is saying here. They're saying that there's a growing fear of disinformation as Tucker Carlson meets Putin.
The leading GOP candidate. And it comes as Kremlin propagandist Tucker Carlson, a leading voice of the right-wing disinformation campaign, is in Moscow. Ironically, he is there in the name of keeping Americans informed, sitting down for an interview with Vladimir Putin, who's nearly 2 years into his unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. All of it in a supercharged election year makes this new warning from Nina Jankowicz about the coming flood of disinformation all the more timely and dire. Jankowicz served as the head of the now dissolved DHS Disinformation Board. She says the United States has failed for more than a decade to address the kind of, quote, salacious, captivating disinformation, including from Russia, that she was working to tackle, but then came for her, including by Republicans in Congress, whose moral failure, she says, has forced them to go after the people working to counter disinformation. Jankowicz writes, quote, "The result is an information ecosystem that is riper for manipulation than ever. The United States had failed to stand up to the very disinformation it had sought to fight, and its broader ongoing struggle to grapple with disinformation bodes ill, not just for the country, but also for democracies around the world." Joining our conversation.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, so basically what MSNBC is doing is that they're laying the groundwork for censorship, right? Which is definitely, totally gonna happen when this interview comes out, okay? Because every single platform already is basically censoring anything that comes from Russia, okay? So you already know that when this interview comes out, the only platform it will be allowed on, only major platform, is X, okay? And this is how they lay the groundwork. They're already saying, look, well, this is disinformation. Interview hasn't even been published yet, right? And they're already telling you that it's disinformation. How can you say something is disinformation before it even comes out? I don't understand. I don't get it, right? Again, they don't want you to decide for yourself what to think, okay? They want to tell you what to think, right? That's how it goes. We have a media that questions peace more than they question war, right? What people really want is peace, okay? I mean, I don't want to see Ukraine get destroyed by Russia or, invaded by Putin even more. I want them to come to a peace agreement if possible, okay? I think that maybe, just maybe, it could be possible. Who knows? Maybe Putin is bloodthirsty and, eventually he'll go in and he'll invade NATO. But it's like the media, they don't even give you a fair opportunity to decide for yourself, what you want to think when it comes to this conflict, okay? If you say, hey, look, I just want peace, right? I just want them to come to an agreement where we don't have to keep sending them billions of dollars. That means that you're pro-Kremlin, right? That means that you're pro-Russia. But again, the reality of what's happening is that they want the war to continue to go on because the military-industrial complex gets paid for it, okay? And then they give the politicians the kickback. It is an election season, so these politicians will get campaign donations from the big defense manufacturers, that get this money from taxpayer dollars. They see this as a good way to try to wear down Russia's military using just taxpayer dollars. And as of right now, no American blood has been shed yet. Okay, so that's the way they see it. Okay, so I actually really do understand the politician side, them wanting to stick it to Putin by sacrificing Ukrainian lives, right? I understand that side of the story. I don't think it's right, right? I don't think it's morally right. I think that we should be doing whatever we can to save Ukrainian lives by ending a war that they may or may not be able to win, okay? I don't think sacrificing Ukrainians as a way to stick it to Putin is right, right? I don't think that's right. Just like I don't think Putin invading Ukraine is right. I don't even know if these sanctions on Russia are right, because we don't even know if they're working. Well, we do know that Russia hasn't stopped their invasion of Ukraine. They're still doing it despite the sanctions. And sanctions, for the most part, haven't stopped the Russian economy from growing. It's still growing, 3.6% GDP growth last year. Sanctions really hurt poor people and the working class more than it really hurts the rich and the people actually running that country. The theory from the West is that, well, sanctions will hurt the poor people enough that they will revolt against the leadership. They'll blame the leadership. However, anytime we try this, it never really works. It doesn't work out. In fact, in Russia's case, they've actually had to lower the prices of the goods that they have to sell to other countries like China, which has actually made their relationships with our bigger enemy, right, China, closer, right? So we're actually driving Russia and China closer together by sanctioning Russia and essentially trying to keep this war going instead of trying to negotiate peace and come to some type of peace agreement, okay? I don't think a lot of stuff that's going on is right. Two wrongs don't make a right, okay? And that's just kind of my opinion on it. But with that being said, we have a lawyer here who's basically saying that Tucker, because he's interviewing Putin, he could possibly be charged under the Espionage Act. So let's take a listen at this conspiracy theory.
Carlson is interviewing Vladimir Putin today, and many people believe it's going to go horribly wrong for Tucker. My first question was, is it even legal for a U.S. reporter to go over to a country that we're basically at war with?
Well, we're not at war with Russia. This is a proxy war with Russia, but that's not the same thing as an actual war, okay? We're not at war with Russia, so that's not even up for conversation, okay? I mean, I don't even know why he said that.
And interview the president of that country? The answer is yes, but I forecast some big problems ahead for Tucker Carlson. The Espionage Act is a U.S. law that basically prohibits us from spying or leaking classified documents to foreign countries. But the words of the law are super broad and could be construed to prohibit any sharing of information with another country with intent to harm the U.S. Is it possible that Tucker shared his questions with Putin's people before the interview? Is it possible that Putin's people provided Tucker with evidence supporting their war with Ukraine? This is definitely information covered by the Espionage Act. However, does Tucker Carlson have an intent to harm the U.S.? This is where the Espionage Act case against Tucker gets weaker, and it gets even more weak when you consider that U.S. government is duty-bound to follow the dictates of the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution guarantees freedom of the press, and the U.S. Supreme Court has done everything it can to protect this provision and journalists. That's why only in extreme cases can the U.S. government violate the Constitution. Journalists are free to publish classified information or information that was stolen so long as the media didn't steal the information, unless the government can demonstrate an immediate and direct threat to national security. So my view is that Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin is ultimately legal, but Tucker is acting boldly. He's taking a risk that he could be prosecuted later on in time on bogus charges.
Yeah, so this guy is basically arguing that the government, the DOJ, could stretch out the definition of, the Espionage Act in regards to the ability to prosecute or charge somebody under that, statute, and go after Tucker, right? This is what he's saying. Now, again, this is a hell of a conspiracy, but hey, I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. government tries to retaliate against Tucker. I mean, allegedly, they spy on him, right? According to Tucker, he did a report on that on Fox News back in the day. But you do have members of the EU Parliament threatening to sanction Tucker over the Putin interview. So I guess anything is possible here in Looney Tunes world, where you have the left becoming even more and more and more authoritarian, right? They don't believe in freedom of the press. They don't believe in freedom of the speech. They believe in any of this stuff, right? They're not liberal anymore. They're just straight up authoritarians, right? This is who they are. So let's read here. A member of the European Parliament is calling on the legislative body to consider imposing sanctions on Tucker Carlson over his interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin, according to a new report. Again, it's amazing how they're already calling it disinformation. They're already calling for sanctions on Tucker, for Tucker to be punished, and the interview hasn't been published yet. Nobody knows the questions have been asked. Nobody knows the things have been said, and they're already calling for punishment. Again, this is ridiculous. Quote, as Putin is a war criminal and the EU sanctions all who assist him in that effort, it seems logical that the External Action Service examine his case as well. MEP guy, don't know his last name, not gonna try to pronounce it, a foreign Belgian prime minister told Newsweek. This guy floated the idea of a travel ban against the former Fox News host, whom he called a mouthpiece of former President Donald Trump and Putin. The interview makes Carlson the first Western journalist to interview Putin since Russia invaded Ukraine. Any potential sanctions would first have to be approved by the External Action Service, the bloc's diplomatic arm that is responsible for foreign policy. After the EAS reviews evidence, it can then bring the case to the European Council to make the final decision. The Council has struggled to pass sanctions on individuals linked to the Kremlin, meaning it is unlikely efforts to sanction Carlson would garner significant support. Any sanctions against Carlson would likely require proof that he is connected to Russia's aggression, something that is absent or hard to prove, one unnamed official told the outlet. Yeah, I mean, because Tucker is not a puppet of the Kremlin, okay? He's not working for Putin, okay? No matter how much these people claim that their political enemies are working on behalf of Putin, that doesn't make it true. I mean, you even had Nancy Pelosi coming out here and claiming that the pro-Palestinian protesters are working on behalf of Putin, right? They're funded by the Russians. So again, this is what they do, okay? I mean, there's so much derangement when it comes to Russia. It's ridiculous. Carlson, for his part, said he chose to interview the Russian dictator because, quote, most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. Quote, we are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can, Carlson said in a video statement published on Tuesday. Quote, Americans have the right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it, he added. Yeah, I agree. Okay, if they're asking us to send billions of dollars and potentially shed American blood, then yeah, we should be able to hear both sides of the story. Okay, I'm just keeping it 100. MEP Ernest Payette was similarly critical of Carlson's interview, which has yet to be released. Quote, Carlson wants to give a platform to someone accused of crimes of genocide. This is wrong. Payette told Newsweek, quote, if Putin has something to say, he needs to say it in front of the ICC. At the same time, Carlson is not being a real journalist since he has clearly expressed his sympathy for the Russian regime and Putin and has constantly disparaged Ukraine, the victim of Russian aggression. So for such propaganda for a criminal regime, you can end up on the list of sanctions, he added. This concerns primarily travel ban to EU countries. Yeah, so with that being said, you already see what's happening here. Okay, they're already trying to censor the interview. They're saying that it's disinformation, which is a call for censorship. This is a call for all the platforms to censor the interview. Okay, to do not allow people to hear what's in the interview. You have the EU. You have people that's in the EU that are basically saying that Tucker should be sanctioned with a travel ban. You have the mainstream liberal media saying that he's a puppet of Putin. Okay, they're saying all this stuff. Again, the meltdown over this is pretty fascinating. Again, it's crazy how the so-called free press ain't really all that free, and how they don't want the American people to have all information and then decide for themselves what they want to think. It's almost as if they're trying to hide something from the American people, which is most certainly probably the case. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.